All right. I'm here with a rare guest, Jean, Archdruid Emeritus. Is that correct?
Yes, it's actually Jean. Quite.
Jean. Yeah, that's what my French
Yeah.
teacher would try to call me. Jean Paul.
Yes, of course.
Do you speak French? Oh, okay. There we go.
I do.
Yeah, my mother was a French teacher, so I, I tried my best to learn French. I didn't do so good. I ended up learning Japanese though, but I won't
Ooh,
embarrass
cool.
myself and try and speak French. Yeah, yeah. It's useful about once a month, so not a lot of Japanese in Utah, unfortunately.
Right. I was.
So, oh, go ahead.
I know French was my first language. I just got back from France last Wednesday. So
Oh, it's your first language.
yeah,
Okay, so you're actually French, would like French, or
yeah, French.
oh wow, okay. I never would have guessed. I mean, you sound like a is that a Midwestern accent?
It is a Midwestern accent, Chicago.
Midwestern, Chicago. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I was gonna say. I was like, I can't detect a hint of French. Did you move to the States pretty early, or?
I was actually my family was French, and I was born here while they were over here.
Oh, I see. Okay. You just kind of bounce back and forth.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a long story.
Okay. All right. Well, we can go into that next time. Let's talk about Druidry or Druidism, the point of the podcast and what I got all dressed up for. So, can you share a little bit about your journey? What led you to the Druid path?
Sure, it was. I from an early age, I didn't really consider myself Christian, although my parents were Catholics. They were Roman Catholics, European Catholics, and it just didn't really speak to me. And so I kind of looked around for different things. When I was in grade eight, um, we read this book called Edith Hamilton's Mythology. It was about the Greek gods, and I was like, "Yes, these really speak to me." And we had a test, and it was Miss Evans. We had a test in class, and it said the Greek gods are still worshipped today. And I said, "Yes," seemed pretty self-evident to me. And of course, I got the paperback, and it was like, "No, it's not. They are not worshipped anymore." And so I was like, kind of crestfallen. Um, but I continued to work with them. Kind of, I didn't really know what I was doing, but I ran across this book at some point in my life called "Drawing Down the Moon" by Margot Adler. And in that book, she talked about there was a thing in there about the new Reformed Druids of North America, and I really liked what I read about them, and so I contacted the contact person and looked into the Reformed Druids of North America, of which I'm still affiliated. And the person I talked to said, "Hey, I'm starting this new group called Arnriacht Fain. Why don't you join?" And that's what I did. So
Awesome.
that's how I got to this point. That was the beginnings.
That was the beginning, and then I'm catching you at the tail end of your journey. You just became Archdruid Emeritus.
Yeah, I mean I'm still in the journey. I joined ADF as like one of the charter members 42 years ago. Um, and I was a solitary back in those days. You know, there was no internet. We just waited for infrequent magazines to be delivered through the mail. And, it was kind of, it was, um, I kind of took the material that I found and, created a practice around it. And then when I first saw my first ritual in person with a grove many years later, I was like, wow, that's what they're doing. And, some of my stuff was pretty close and some of my stuff wasn't so close, but close enough, I think. And, it's, it
Close
just
enough.
practicing with, yeah, practicing with other people was a pretty powerful experience, especially after practicing on my own for a really long time.
I can imagine. So, yeah,
So that
yeah,
was the beginnings of my,
a lot of this
yeah,
stuff
that was,
seems to. That was the beginning. Yeah, yeah. Can you talk a little bit about some of those rituals? I'm very curious. What goes on? I know Druids used to get a bad rap about human sacrifice. I assume that wasn't happening, but what what is your standard ritual if there is one? Like, let's say summer solstice. What would that look like?
yeah. Well, it's what we have in ADF right now is a thing called the Core Order of Ritual. It's a collection of 18 steps that we go through, and we're not a dogmatic religion. We're orthopraxic. We're about right practice. And but if you do all
Mm,
18 steps in a public ritual, we say you have done an ADF ritual. So our basically what we do is our rituals are all about building relationships. We have what we call certain spirits and entities that we work with in our ritual: the Earth Mother, spirits of inspiration, a gatekeeper, and what we call the kindreds: ancestors, nature spirits, and shining ones, the gods and goddesses. And so we make offerings to these entities so that they get to know us better and we get to know them better. We make offerings so that we may receive offerings in return. So our rituals are they're open, they're permeable. We don't cast a circle to keep things out. If you want to come and go, you can come and go and do whatever you please. We just really we believe that we recreate the cosmos and the space around us, and so we start with usually a purification part. We have a pre-ritual briefing where we explain to everybody what we're going to be doing. I think we've all been in rituals where we get there and we have no idea what's going on. So we try to make sure that people know what's going on. If there's songs to learn or if there's things they've never seen. So we do that. We do a purification, water and like incense typically. And then we do what we call building a group mind. We do kind of a grounding and centering meditation, which we are often called the Two Powers meditation or the Great Tree meditation. And it kind of brings everybody into focus and grounded in the experience. And then we start off by making an offering to the Earth Mother. This is the Earth Mother comes first. Really, without the Earth, we're not here. So that's the beginnings of our worship.
yeah.
And then we make an offering. We offer whatever it may be, cornmeal, whatever the case may be. In every ADF ritual, there has to be a fire. That's the one necessity. So I've got a candle here. That's fire. Or a red jasper stone is fine, or a blazing fire is fine. And so we do offerings to the Earth Mother. We'll just briefly we'll say something like, Earth Mother, you are a firm foundation. We come from you. We flourish because of you. We return to you, Earth Mother. Accept this offering. And then we make an offering. And then, we do the spirits of inspiration, which is kind of an optional thing, but like about the Awen and being inspired. And then we bless our hallows. We have in like standard Western magical tradition, there's 4 elements. We have 3 realms: land, sea, and sky. And so our
Hmm.
hallows, our holy things, are really a well, a tree, and a fire. So we bless those. We will
Mm,
silver the well, we'll put silver in it, and we'll anoint the tree with water from the well, and we'll make an offering to the fire to bless them. And then we use a gatekeeper. Gatekeepers are found in early Anatolian writings from the Hittites, and we work with that gatekeeper we say mix your magics with ours, and we open the gates between the worlds. So we open the well as a portal to the ancestors, and we open the fire as a portal to the shining ones, the gods and goddesses, and we open the tree as a portal that spans all those worlds, roots in the ground, branches in the sky. And then we make offerings to them. We make offerings to the ancestors. There's different kinds of ancestors, blessings to the offerings to the nature spirits, and offerings to the shining ones. And then if we have a deity of the occasion, we invite them in as well and make offerings to them. We feel that making offerings, something that we call ghosty, it's a Proto-Indo-European word that means being a good guest and being a good host, is important. So we make offerings to them, and then after we
Yeah.
make all these offerings, we do one big offering, one big sacrifice that commemorates the creation of the cosmos through sacrifice. And those sacrifices are like not animal
That's
sacrifices. They're you know whiskey, or they're grain, or whatever the case may be. We offer it to the fire. And then once we've done all these
see.
offerings and made this final sacrifice, we look for an omen. We'll draw Ogham, or we'll draw Futhark, or we'll draw tarot cards to try to get an idea of what the kindreds bring to us in this ritual, any insights that they may have. And this is what we call the return flow. The idea is that we've given these offerings. Now we'd like for them to give us something back. So the omen
Yeah.
allows us to get an insight into what's going on with them. And then once we
That's
do that,
fascinating.
yeah, once we do the omen, this goes back to RDNA days. Once we do the omen, then we share the waters of life, as we call it, which is we get a vessel, and it's got water in it, it's got lemonade, it's got spirits in it, whatever the case may be, and we ask the blessings to descend into the waters. And then we share those waters with everybody in the circle, whether it's by anointing them or sharing a cup, whatever the case may be. That way, the blessings from the gods come into the waters, or from the kindreds come into the waters, and we share them amongst themselves. That's called the return flow. And then once we do
That's really
that,
cool.
there's a working section if we want to do some workings. And otherwise, we thank everybody in reverse order, and say thank you for being here. And then we close the ritual. We close the gates and close the ritual.
That's really interesting. Yeah, sounds very ancient, and sounds very. I don't know if you're familiar with Shinto, but Japanese shamanism type religion, but sounds really similar to that, where you go up and you have to bathe, you purify yourself first, and then you like clap to draw upon your ancestors and all of that. All right, so we had a bit of a technical difficulty, but we're back here. But yeah, yeah. So like I was saying, a lot of these rituals seem super ancient. I don't know if you've studied the history of some of these other religions, but do you know how far back Druidry goes? Is it BC?
Well, I think that as far as we're concerned, it goes back about as far as 1963,
Oh,
which is when the Reformed Druids of North America started. We really don't have much of anything left from the ancient world. There's really no
yeah,
writings. We know, what ADF concerns itself with the Indo-European spectrum. So Connacht in the west of Ireland to the Indus River Valley in India, and any place that Indo-European languages were spoken in between. So we have some conception of what some of those rituals look like in between there. But as far as like Druid rituals per se, from like the British Isles or from Ireland, we really have no idea. And
yeah.
so we just kind of recreated it kind of with, the thoughts of the ancients in mind.
Oh, that's cool.
The
Again,
fire is something that's very central to, pagan practices, we believe, or Indo-European practices. So that's why the fire is of necessity.
yeah, yeah. So you try and get as close as you can based on the documents that the writings from the Romans and the Greeks and things like that.
Yeah, fundamentally, I mean, someone once said that we'll never know what the ancients did, but we can, try to build something, with them in mind. I mean, that's why I'm a neo-pagan. Um, you know, there's really no pagans of long standing still around from the ancient days.
Right.
Um, so that's where the neo part comes in.
I see. Yeah, didn't the Romans like make it so that Druidry was punishable by death or something like that at one point?
Well, when the Christian emperors came along, to have any of those old documents around, old sources, was punishable by death.
Oh man.
So that was a pretty discouraging kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a bummer. But so where did okay, so you're saying the fire was based on, very common in paganism. Who uh who came up with a lot of the rituals because they sound to have be very similar to a lot of ancient rituals in like Shinto and then like Temple of Solomon and that kind of stuff where they like what's the who rewrote them and why?
I think that the early RDNA rituals, which were kind of made up, um, I think they were just, I'm not sure exactly what they were based on, but the RDNA people were fundamentally Episcopalians. And so
Oh,
I think
really?
I think a lot of the ritual form was probably modeled after, not after Christianity, but some of the stuff that we see there, the idea of making an offering and, having an omen to find out the insights. I mean, a lot of churches, they just do their stuff and, we're going to do this ritual and there you go, we're done. Have a nice day. But I think that the idea of looking for an omen is kind of unique, in that you want some feedback for what you've done.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of the liturgy that was developed in RDNA or NRDNA, and in other places, really was, had to do more with, I think, other rituals that people had seen, especially in like a pagan realm.
Yeah.
Obad, the Order of Bards, Obates, and Druids, their stuff looks like standard Western magical tradition stuff. Casting a circle, doing these kind of things, honoring the directions. I think that there's some fundamental stuff there that's probably found in Freemasonry, maybe found in other religious practices, maybe close to you, that sometimes look like Freemasonry and may not be. Um, not that I'm speaking from any knowledge of any of those, of course,
Yeah.
but
Right.
I think that a lot of the ritual practices are kind of the same everywhere.
Yeah. No, that's what I was trying to get at. It seems so similar, and yeah, a lot of Mormonism, the stuff that goes on in the temples, is Freemasonry origins, and Joseph Smith's argument was um, that the Freemasons got it from it was handed down from like the Temple of Solomon, so that's why the consistency, but I don't know if there's any proof to that. But what's kind of so what kind of benefits do you get from these rituals? So that's one of the things that I'm most interested in. So you like gather in a circle. Are you like refreshed for the week? Does it provide clarity? What are the benefits?
I think that I think it provides a number of benefits. I mean, we're orthopraxic. We're about right practice. So I
Yeah,
think that the most important thing is making offerings and getting to know the spirits in our world better. So I think that's number one. I think number two, if you're doing ritual with other people, it's building community.
yeah,
Which I think that when people, I mean, you and I can practice on our own, and that's great for us. But if we have other people practicing with us, it's got a little bit more oomph. It's got a little bit more, presence.
yeah,
And I think for ourselves, the analogy that I like to use is that if we're going to interact with the spirits in our world, Inevitably we pray. I just wrote a blog about this today. We pray. We go to prayer when we need something.
Yeah.
You know, beginning of prayer. If everything's great in our world, we don't need anything. But when we ask for the gods to intervene for us, it's because we can't do something ourselves.
Right.
And so my example is, it's easier to get somebody to work with you if they already know you than if I was, if you and I have known each other for 10 years and I say, John Paul, would you lend me $10? You'd probably say, I lent this guy $10 before. Yeah, here it is. I know I'll get it back.
Yeah.
But if some guy on the street in your hometown and say, hey, I'm a druid, would you lend me $10? The answer is no. And it's because we don't have relationships built. And so by building these relationships, we get to understand ourselves and the spirits in our world better. So what we do is we do a ritual that kind of honors the occasion, whether it's a solstice or equinox or a moon or just because. And at the same time, we build relationships with the ancestors, nature spirits, and shiny ones in our world.
Yeah.
So a lot of people do feel energized and refreshed after it. I have a daily practice that I do. I do something every day. And so it's just a part of my life. And it's something that I think helps me and hopefully helps others as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they've shown a lot of studies that, um, or they've done a lot of studies that show that rituals and things like that are essential for prosperity, and that's why like Orthodox Jews are so successful and stuff like that. We as a species, we crave that, and plus combine that with community, you're unstoppable. So it's an actual necessity.
Yeah, it's very powerful, especially when, you have similar group experiences. It's powerful, and it's just nice to be able to say, hey, it was good to see you today in ritual. And did that mean something to you? Oh yeah, it meant something to me too. So
Yeah. Yeah. Having a common cause and a common thing to gather around. So you talked about like forest spirits and gods and things like that. Um, I don't mean to get too weird, but have you ever done like mushrooms or DMT or anything like that? You don't have to say if you don't want to, but
yeah, I mean, I think that we can have what Castaneda would have called non-ordinal experiences, with or without drugs.
yeah, right.
And I think that, those, when you find yourself in those states of consciousness, you're more open to things that present themselves. And I think what that does, whether it's, drug induced or not drug induced, is that we are able to say, I had this experience and it was real to me,
Yeah,
and I gained this insight from it. So,
yeah,
situation, definitely have had that happen.
yeah,
Um, it's sometimes very unexpected, where you do something and it's like, oh my goodness, what was that? And I think what's important is when you say, oh my goodness, what was that? Is that you say, oh, that really was something, as opposed to saying, nah, that couldn't have been anything. So I think acknowledging the unusual or the out of the ordinary, that's important.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that might be the only way to really unlock parts of your subconscious that are kind of hidden away. You have to kind of believe that it's there, and you have to um, kind of meditate and pray and kind of open up your mind to actually see those things. Um,
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that we're taught at an early age, when we see things that are unusual and we talk to our parents or our friends about it, they're like, that can't be. You imagine that. And, yeah, maybe I did imagine it, but it was pretty real.
yeah, yeah, it's real to that person, and I'm not practicing Mormon anymore, but I remember when I was a missionary, I was biking around Japan, and this storm picked up. It's really really nasty storm, and we were on our way to visit somebody. And in Mormonism, you can use what's called the priesthood, and in a pinch. Usually you don't use it willy-nilly. You use it when it's an emergency. But anyway, as I was doing it, I felt like this surge flow through me, and then the rain stopped, and that stuck with me. It's something that I've never felt that way before, and probably haven't really felt that way since. But it's definitely something that only a belief in the spiritual could bring out, and it changes you. It makes you a different person. And anyway, I think that's what a lot of these different spiritualities and religions and things are trying to tap into, is that feeling, that emotion, and that binding with each other that can only be found with spirituality. um,
Yeah, I think that I believe, we live in a three-dimensional world. We're kind of bound by the laws of physics.
mhm.
And, when we need magic done, when we need big changes, we have to ask the gods for it or work with them to do it. And I think sometimes that we find ourselves in the middle of something, like in the middle of your storm there, or in the middle of something else, and something unexpected and amazing happens. And we experience that, and it is profound because it makes you believe that you can do more and that you can be more.
Yeah,
And that's a enlightening experience regardless of your religious inclinations.
yeah, for sure. I don't know if you read this book from G.K. Chesterton called Orthodoxy. But it talks about how spirituality is what really separates us from the animals. He was a Christian apologist, but he was mostly referring to Christianity. I'm sure he wasn't a huge fan of paganism, but I think it can be applied elsewhere, where it's like imagination and not necessarily just imagination, but um, having a soul and the spirit is what really makes humans able to do absolutely amazing things. And so,
I used to do a lot more camping than I do now, but I'd go out for a week or so at a time, and I get up early in the morning. And what I noticed was I get up right before dawn, and I could hear the crows to the east of me. And as the sun was rising, the crows would come closer to me. And as the sun would rise where I was, the crows were right overhead, and they kept going west. And so I used to call them sun singers because I believe that they believe that they're the ones that bring the sun up,
yeah, that's interesting.
because they sing up the sun, and they keep moving west as it's coming up. And so I think that we surely, the human creature has spirituality right at hand. But I think that there's other creatures as well that participate in that, and that are religious creatures, just maybe in a different way.
Even the crows, they have
Yeah, especially the crows.
their own version of spirituality. Yeah,
That's
yeah. And a lot of this stuff dates back, super ancient times when maybe I'm a I have a doctorate in physiology and pharmacology, but anyway, I think a lot of this stuff we've kind of evolved to have too. And um, it's not only something that is external; it's internal as well. And I feel that it's something that's absolutely necessary, and it makes us happy and makes us who we are and that kind of stuff. So yeah.
yeah. I think it's interesting, and I think I love to see. I love human ceremony because I mean that's what I do, but I love ceremony that extends beyond the human realm, into unexpected places, and seeing, especially animals, the nature spirits, do things that are unexpected.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I lived in Texas for a little while, and I lived out in the middle of the forest, and I noticed how cyclical everything was. I noticed how like the boar would only come out certain times of night, and the porcupines would only come out certain times of year, and as far as Druidry is concerned, I feel like they do a really good job tapping into that, like the flow of nature. And I want you to talk a little bit about that if you're comfortable with it. But
Absolutely.
like,
Yeah,
how does that work? How I feel like with modern technology and houses and computers and all that stuff, we're detached from that, and that may be a reason for a lot of mental illness and things like that. Because I have a feeling that a lot of mental illness comes from not doing what your body wants you to do, right? And so I feel like Druidry does a really good job kind of emphasizing that, and you know realizing that we're part of nature and we're all connected. But yeah, could you kind of talk about that? What's the secret?
but when we talk about the nature spirits, the what we call the kindreds, what the nature spirits bring to us is they teach us of the cycles of nature and the cycles in our lives. Because
Mm,
the nature spirits, in a very fundamental way, are this annual procession through the seasons. They're born, they bud, they flourish, they flower, they give fruit, they get harvested, they diminish, they die, they return. And we see these cycles in our lives. We don't die every year, but we kind of slow down every year. And so I think the nature spirits teach us of the cyclical nature of reality,
mm,
where, because, we also go through those phases. Whether I'm 10 years old or 90 years old, I go through those same cycles of birth and growth and, all these
yeah,
other diminishing, um, in my own way, in kind of a more cyclical way as opposed to any other way. I think that humans, especially post industrial revolution, we tend to look at a lot of things in a very linear basis.
yeah,
Tomorrow, next week. I'm going to talk to you on Thursday. I've got an appointment next Friday. We see things as this linear continuum. But I think, as pagans and as people who understand the spirit, the cycles of the seasons and the cyclical nature of reality, we tend to look things as things more in a cyclical manner. That we turn around this circle often and many, many times. And sure, next year is going to be 2026, and the year after that is going to be 2027. But I look at things as we just had Beltane, and the next thing is going to be the summer solstice, and the next thing is Lunasa, and the next thing is this and that. So it's just we move through these cycles. So we move this way as opposed to this way. And inevitably we age and we go through this linear process. But I think that from a spiritual standpoint, we see the cyclical process. It's reinforced by the nature around us. So, and you know what, nature goes through those cycles. Those animals don't live for just 1 year and they go away. They live for longer, just like we live for longer. and
yeah,
and it just emphasizes that we really are a part of that. Yeah, we're smart apes that can do lots of stuff and build stuff and go to the moon where everybody else can't. But fundamentally, we're just those same cyclical creatures that we find ourselves in. So I think that by honoring nature and honoring those cycles in the seasons, and also understanding that we have, I think, an obligation to care for the natural world and to care for the what I would call the Earth Mother. I think it's really fundamental. We can't despoil the Earth, because at some point, if you kill the Earth, you kill yourselves,
yeah,
and if you damage the Earth, you damage a lot more than just yourself.
yeah. I think the world would do a lot better if there was a lot more druids in it, protecting nature. I think we're definitely on a bad path. What's funny is usually what happens when a species gets too out of control is nature comes in and balances it. But with humans, it can't do that. We're too smart. We keep dodging their diseases, their predators, whatever comes in, and I think we need to deliberately do it, protect nature, because we're just this force that just wipes out everything everywhere we go. And usually, if there's too many locusts, there'll be more birds. Or like in the case of Hawaii, I guess the first creature to arrive there was the fruit fly, and it just spread like crazy. And what happened is they evolved all into different types of fruit fly. So there was like a predator fruit fly that was eating the other fruit flies and that
Wow.
kind of stuff. But with humans, it's not really like that. I do feel like we are kind of regulating ourselves in a way by lowering birth rates and things like that. So maybe things are just getting too difficult, and so people aren't having as many kids because of how many people there are, or something like that. But no, we definitely need to take care of nature, and realize that we're a part of it. But so I want to talk a little bit more about the circadian rhythms and the cycles and things like that. With the solstice and things like that, are you aligning yourself with nature when you're doing those rituals?
I think so because to me, there's a certain symbolic value in some of the rituals, and they're fundamentally very solar. If you take a look at the equinoxes, it's this balance point between day and night.
Yeah.
And the beauty of the equinoxes is that not only is it a balance point here in the northern hemisphere, but in the southern hemisphere as well. Because you have to remember that when we celebrate Beltane in the northern hemisphere, they're doing Samhain in the southern hemisphere. The high days are opposite, but the
Mm.
equinoxes, it's the same. It's equal day, equal night.
Ah.
We come into synchronicity at these points in the wheel, and I think that that's really important. I mean, I one year, and I'll go back to your question, but one year I did, it was Samhain, and I did a Samhain ritual with my local grove. I got on a plane, and 3 days later, I'm in Australia doing a Beltane ritual, and it was like, what's really different? It's one Earth, it just happens to be where I'm located on it. But I think that, I think if we look at what the rituals really represent, the solstices are the stopping of the sun. They're these extremes where, the sun moves, farthest away and moves closer. And so just a reminder in our lives that these are points along that cyclical continuum where, you know, this is the longest day, this is the longest night, and points in between. And I think if we're aware of those changes and if we're aware of those instances, it gives us pause to think. For myself, I really like the time between the 1st of February and the summer solstice because the sun is increasing. I'm seeing more of the
Yeah.
sun, and I love the sun. And I think it reinforces this idea of the cycles, and that's why a lot of Druids and a lot of pagans in general look to the moon, because I watch those phases of the moon religiously in my world, in my own personal practice, because once again, it just reinforces that cyclical nature of the universe. That we're going through these cycles. We're going through this annual cycle around the sun, and we're doing this monthly cycle around the moon. And it's like all these wheels turning, and we're turning with it. It's
Yeah.
kind of this thing of beauty. It's like art in motion.
Yeah. You're connecting with the cosmos itself
Right,
by you're syncing up with the entire universe.
right.
Was
So
the was Stonehenge Druid, or is that something else?
I think
It's
that it's
Or
kind
do
of
we not know?
it's up for debate. I think it's actually much older than the
Oh.
parents of the Druids, the Neolithic people that built it. But the Druids came along. This is my theory. The Druids came along and said, "Ooh, this is pretty cool.
Like, whoa, cool.
It aligns with the seasons. It's really super cool." And so they just came upon a magical place that worked for them. And if it's kind of like if you found a modern building that suited your purposes, and you didn't have to build it; you just had to use it. And I think that it's very powerful. And a lot of those those Neolithic monuments have alignments.
Yeah.
Solstice, and so to the ancients, it must have blown their minds. It blows my mind today.
Like, what the heck? How'd they
Right.
put all that stuff here? Yeah, I wonder if reading some of these. these spirituality books, whether they're Chinese or things like that, were all pretty similar, and even the ancient ones were pretty similar. And I wonder if Stonehenge and those Neolithic monoliths and things were them realizing that, hey, we're becoming detached from nature, we need to do something about it, and so let's build this thing. And so now we're back in the cycle of the cosmos, and we can track it and sync up with the trees and the wolves. And because I'm with you, I like when I'm in touch with the seasons and nature, and I'm outside and that kind of stuff, that's when I'm the happiest and the most content. And I wonder if some of these ancient religions, and same thing with the Druidry, um, they 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 felt that too. They're like, this is who we are, and we're going away from that. We need to be pulled back towards it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I was in Ireland in November, and I went and visited Newgrange. And the guy who gave the tour of the day I was there, he said that they found some like cremated remains within Newgrange, and they did DNA analysis on them. And he said that the DNA that they found there was from Anatolia, modern day Turkey. And so the theory is that those Anatolians are the ones that built Newgrange, not indigenous people from the area, but people from thousands of miles away across the Mediterranean. Go to Ireland and build this like amazing temple that aligns with the summer solstice. And um, so yeah, it gives you pause to think. I mean, obviously there was some level of intelligence, well, a lot of intelligence at the time, and obviously those solar events were something important for them, something repeatable, something cyclical, and to see the sun come through that passageway and illuminate this thing once a year must wow,
It's surreal.
surreal,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, back then, no internet, not a lot of written language, not a lot of anything. And so they had to go by what they felt, right? And
right?
so I think there's a lot of ancient wisdom out there where, it's very raw, it's very real. Whereas now you can get your mind muddled with 1,000 people's different opinions on what makes you happy and things like that. But these ancient ones, they all they had was their feelings,
Right.
and talking to each other and philosophy and things. And so I think if you want to get at the core of what it means to be a person, the ancient ones are probably a good group to look at if you want to get down to brass tacks, to turn a phrase.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, they were, what they experienced was awe. And that's the same thing that we experience, when we see these sites. It's like, they just it's amazing that for us as tool users, that we say, wow, these people, all this, thousands of years ago, 5,500 years ago, built this thing with their own hands. It's just, because I mean, it's hard enough for me to plant my garden, let alone build a Neolithic monument.
Yeah, it's amazing what people can do when they don't have screens to stare at, or endless distractions, people trying to steal your attention at all times. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting you talked about you say they were from Turkey that came to, yeah,
Modern day
yeah.
Turkey. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was a missionary in Japan and I was walking around these different Shinto and Buddhist temples, I kept noticing similarities between um, ancient Judaism, Christianity, and Shintoism. And in Kyoto, there's this ancient festival. It's like the oldest festival in Japan, and they walk through the middle of the town, and they're carrying these basically what look like the Ark of the Covenant on their shoulders. And that could be a coincidence, right? But then there's tapestries that have like pyramids and camels and stuff on them, and it's like, oh, okay. But it was the arrival of probably a Jewish group on this. They came across the Silk Road all the way over to Japan, and then they started preaching, Judaism, and then basically the local shaman group adopted that and took what they wanted from it, because there's pictures of menorahs and stuff in Shinto temples, some of them, and there's like the tradition where you can never let the fire go out in the middle of the temple. And then there's in the Shinto shrines, there's also they have what's called a Holy of Holies, which is from the Book of Solomon, right? Solomon's temple. And God is inside the temple, right? And no one can go back there. And from the Bible, they talked about how only the high priest could go in the Holy of Holies once a year. But in Shinto, once that's sealed, no one can go back there, right? So I wonder if they didn't have a high priest or something. But anyway, the reason I bring this up is it just seems like we're all definitely connected with a lot of these religions. Something as you'd think is different as Judaism and Shinto, and they're both basically the same thing. And a lot of these, like when you were talking about the Druid practices as well, it sounds like they share a lot of common stuff with all these religions, and we're all pretty much the same, I guess, is the point I'm trying to make. It's just
Absolutely.
no reason to hate each other. We're all
Absolutely.
basically doing the same thing.
And I think that's well put, because for me, you know, the commonality of practice, what we have in common binds us. You
Yeah,
know, it's much more important and much more lasting than the things that separate us.
yeah,
I went to a multi-faith thing tonight where there's pagans and Jews and, Muslims and stuff. And it's a very peaceful experience when you have something in common.
that's really cool. Yeah, where was that? Which state or
This
is
is
that?
in Ohio.
Ohio. Okay,
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, need more of that.
I like it.
Yeah, what's funny is when I was a missionary in Japan, the people who hated us the most were the other Christians. And to be frank, I can't say I blame them, because it's the same reason why the Baptists didn't like the Mormons, because they were stealing flock members. And so it's like, hey, what are you doing here? We're stealing all our members. But no, I think when you get down to it, it's all pretty much the same stuff anyway. But yeah, I would approach other Christians while I was over there, and I'd be like, oh, we're friends. Finally, another Christian, and they're like, oh, get out of here. Like, I don't want anything to do with you. Kairi Nasai, go home. That's what they would tell us.
That's funny.
Kind of sad, but it's good that there's interdisciplinary and faith stuff going on.
I think so. I think it's a really nice way for people to say, hey, what we do is we take a topic and then everybody looks to their holy books to talk about it. And, for the pagans, there are no holy books really. And so we kind of have to make it up. But, when you celebrate your similarities, it's a powerful binding force.
Yeah. So for anyone listening who wants to get into Druidry, is it Druidry or Druidism, or is it both?
I think that I think it's Druidry in English speaking countries. And I was just in France where they call it Druidism.
Ah,
So I think it's a little bit of both. I would say for English speakers, Druidry or Druidism, but try Druidry first.
Druidry. Okay. So if somebody wants to get into Druidry, what should they do? Should they send your organization an email and say, hey, let's do this, or should they just read some stuff? What's the path?
I think that there's a number of really good books out there. And there are a lot of good organizations out there, and you can go to their websites. Like for us, it's adf.org, or there's druidry.org for OBOD, or there's ADO for the Anglican Druid Order. There's all kind rdna.info. There's a lot of places out there. Just Google or, use a search engine and look for Druidry. And, you know, most places, if they're legit, are going to be more than happy to share information with you. The cost of membership in the different organizations is different. RDNA is free, ADF is $30, OBOT is more expensive, but they all have something really good to offer. And no matter what you learn, it's going to, I think it's going to help you out. But that's what I would do. There's some, I'm biased here, but there's a druid named Christopher Hughes, Christopher with a K. He's the head of the Anglesey Druid Order. He is brilliant, and he just put out this thing called the Book of Druidry. I would highly recommend that to others, but there's good books from lots of different druids. And, look at Amazon, go to your local library, Google it, whatever, on Druidry. And, if in any of those organizations they ask you to do something unreasonable, forget it. They're not legit. But if they're there to help you and give you some good ideas, I think it's for free. I know that with shameless self promotion here, but with ADF, we have a thing called the Hearthkeeper's Way, and it's free to anybody. You go to our website and get it, and it's about 100 pages long. It's a description of practice and rituals and things of that nature. It's free. It's yours. You can learn more about us and see if it suits you, or try some of the stuff and maybe learn some more about yourself. I
Yeah.
think it's a good way to start.
Yeah, and so you can sync up with nature, and you guys are pretty accepting. There's no gatekeeping,
No,
even though there's gatekeepers.
yeah,
From what I heard,
those gatekeepers are divinities or spirits, but
they're
yeah,
not keeping people out of there.
yeah, we don't gatekeep. I mean, we look for people of like mind, and you know, we are very open and welcoming, um, and we invite those who are open and welcoming as well.
Yeah, sounds like a really cool organization.
I think so. I mean, I'm biased. I've been there for a long,
A long time. Yeah, well, you
but
got up to Archdruid. Is that as high as it gets? Is that
it's it's
high as it
yeah.
gets? Wow. Well, thanks for joining me on my little podcast. I didn't realize that you're basically you were at least the prophet of the organization, more or less. I guess you don't call them prophets, but
I wouldn't call him a prophet. It just was the head of the organization. The Archdruid is supposed to give the spiritual guidance or spiritual direction, but we have a pretty well established practice, and I'm sure that our new Archdruid is going to do things a little bit different. But the kindreds remain the same, and working with the spirits in our world is something that's very important.
yeah,
And the more we learn about them, the more they learn about us, and the more we all benefit from it.
yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, I wish there were more of you, but I do feel like there is a resurgence of this stuff going. Do you feel that as well? Do you see that at least more
I think
people
so.
interested?
I think people are interested and their curiosity is is what brings them to it. I think for a long time people thought, well, there is nothing else. There's just these few choices here, and but there's a lot of interconnectedness. You mentioned it, so I'm not afraid to say it. But there are similarities between nature practices and Shinto.
Yeah,
Shinto is very much very regional and very attached to a particular place. But I think that the spirit behind it, pardon the pun, is really much more universal. And I think it harkens back to a different pace, a different way of life.
yeah,
But there's nothing that prevents a person to be a nature worshiper in the most technological of worlds. They're
yeah,
not they're not mutually exclusive. And so my hope is that we all get to be more inclusive and understanding and welcoming, and that we get to interact and understand the spirits in our world a lot better.
yeah, yeah. I think so too, and not to blow smoke or whatever, but I think of all the religions, I think Druidry is probably one of the better ones to do in the modern age, at least, because it's like it reminds you to get back in touch with nature as much as possible, and I think that
Yeah,
would make us all a little happier.
I won't disagree with that. Once there's a big bias like this wide over here, but it's a part of my life and a part of my practice, and one that I really like. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about it, and I really appreciate your kindness and hospitality in inviting me to talk.
Yeah, thank you. Is there anything anything we missed? Anything that wanted to end on, or did I give a pretty good summary of?
I I think you did a really good job. It's we're polytheists. We believe in many gods, um, and that's it could be one, 10, 10,000. It's all really up to you. We don't tell people what to believe, and I think that that's also important. And I appreciate you exploring it with me this evening, and I think you came about it the right way and asked the right questions. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I try to be as respectful as possible. So hopefully
You're good. Yeah,
yeah.
right.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, John. And yeah, I'll put a link to your group at the bottom of the page if that's okay. If people want to check it out,
Absolutely.
and yeah, I highly encourage people to look into it. It's really cool.
Sounds good. Yep, adf.org, and we thank you.
All right. All right. Well, thanks so much, John.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay. You too.
Bye.
All right.